Hey everyone, welcome to the channel where we love to talk about movies. Welcome especially if you're new. If you enjoy talking about movies and staying up to speed on what's in theaters and what's worth checking out, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a review. Alright, with that we're going to get into today's review, which is for Moonage Daydream. It's a new documentary about David Bowie, so let's dive on in. So in this, a cinematic odyssey exploring David Bowie's creative and musical journey from visionary filmmaker Brett Morgan and sanctioned by the Bowie estate. So we're just gonna talk to 5 different points about the documentary that stood out to me, and then we'll wrap up with kind of my final thoughts and overall letter grade for the film. So going into this, I knew pretty much nothing about David Bowie. I think the only thing I would say I knew about him was that he played Tesla in The Prestige, which is one of my favorite movies. But like, I I'm sure I've heard some of his music, but I wouldn't be able to tell you what any of his music is, or at least not before the documentary. So I knew pretty much nothing going in, but I know that he's a significant artist, and so I was interested to kind of check out the documentary and hopefully learn something about David Bowie. So coming out of it, I definitely think he's a very interesting individual, and it was, yeah, really just an individual who wanted to explore everything in life, and he seemed very genuine about that. I think that was the main thing that stood out to me about him as a person seeing this documentary. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about the documentary is, given that it's about a musician and one that I'm not very familiar with, I wanted to talk to whether or not it got me more interested in him and his music. And I would say I'm a bit more interested to check out his music. I think from what we saw in the documentary, I think there'll be some stuff that I would like of his, but I'm gonna guess that the majority of it is not stuff that would be on like a go-to playlist for me. But it did seem like he had kind of a wide variety of music that he explored, so I am curious to check his stuff out now. The third thing I wanted to talk to was that the pacing was pretty slow. It felt like it took a long time for the documentary to get going. At first, it just felt like a very long, extended, like, music video, and it didn't really feel like a documentary and that they were, telling us a story. So that didn't work all that well for me. And then I think I checked my watch like halfway through and I was like, oh, we're only halfway through. So it was, while it was interesting, it did feel fairly slow. I feel like they could have maybe cut out some of like the music. I would have preferred if they had focused more on kind of the talking segments. I think it was good to have some of the music in there, but I think they maybe overdid it a little bit. It definitely felt like a long documentary. And then the fourth thing that kind of stood out to me was just kind of his one of his points of view that gets brought up in the documentary, and that was his belief to like live in the present, live for today, and especially to go through life and never like waste a day. Like you shouldn't get through a day and not have done something with it. And that's not to say you always have to be active. This is more so my take on that. Like you can do something with a day even if it's just a day off and to, recuperate. Like that's still, bettering yourself and that sort of a thing. But I think a lot of people just go through life and they go through the motions. So I think it is important to take each day as it comes and not necessarily, yeah, not necessarily just be looking ahead and trying to make it to the next thing, but being in the here and now. And I thought that was a very powerful message from him. And then last thing that I wanted to talk to you was that he just seemed like a very sort of different sort of a rock star. Like he doesn't seem like your typical. Yeah, it was interesting kind of seeing his character and how, yeah, and he talks to it in the documentary how he never really shows his true self, and it's or at least certainly not early on, and you kind of put on this performance on stage and for people, but part of that's enjoyable, but it's still a performance and that sort of a thing. But like I don't know, he seemed just like a very interesting and sort of thoughtful and thinking individual, which I don't think you see all that often. At least I haven't. Maybe I need to learn more about other rock stars, but he just kind of seemed like a different breed from the rest of them, which, yeah, it was just very interesting And yeah, I think that's what mainly stood out to me in the documentary. So overall, wrapping things up with my letter grade, I give this a letter grade of a B. I think it was really interesting to learn about David Bowie and the sort of person that he was, at least how it's presented in the documentary, especially all of his exploration of life, and especially all the different sort of arts that are out there, whether that was, sculpting, painting, film, music. Like he wanted to explore it all, and I thought that was just really interesting. And then yeah, listening to kind of his points of view on life was also very like refreshing and kind of thought provoking. So I did think the pacing weighed it down quite a bit, and that's why it's not necessarily higher. I think it is just a solid B, but it was, yeah, very, at least from my point of view, very educational. I assuming what was presented was true and not sort of, edited to make it look like something that it wasn't. I'm going to assume that's not the case. And yeah, I walked away and feel like I now know somebody a bit better that I knew nothing about. So I'm appreciative for that. But if you've had a chance to see this documentary, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And with that, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe. And thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.